This meeting to order. Welcome to number 78, House of Commons Standing Committee on Government Operations and Estimates, also known as the mighty OGGO, the only committee that matters. Pursuant to the motion adopted by the committee on Thursday, September 28, 2023, the committee is meeting on the study of the replacement of the CP-140 Aurora by the Boeing P-8 Poseidon. Just a reminder, colleagues, as always, not to put earpieces next to the microphone as it causes feedback and potential injury. I understand we have opening statements today. We have Mr. Bill Matthews back with us again, Mr. Page, and then Ms. Gregory. We'll go in that order. Mr. Matthews, welcome back. The floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will try and be much quicker than 5 minutes. Thank you for the invite. I'm here with my colleague Nancy Tremblay from our ADM Material Group, as well as with colleagues from PSPC and ISED, who you'll hear from momentarily. As you said, to discuss the Canadian Multi-Mission Aircraft project, which will replace the CP-140 and equip the Canadian Armed Forces with a long-range crewed maritime patrol aircraft that will specialize in anti-submarine and anti-surface warfare. This procurement will further help ensure the Canadian Armed Forces are world-class in intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance capability. Given that we're a little bit late, Mr. Chair, in starting, may I just wrap it up there and say I look forward to your questions, and I will pass it over to Mr. Page.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Page.
Good afternoon. I'm afraid I'm going to be a little bit longer than Mr. Matthews. I'll go through my remarks as presented. Good afternoon. My name is Simon Page. I'm the Assistant Deputy Minister of the Defence and Marine Procurement Branch at Public Services and Procurement Canada. Thank you for inviting me to the committee meeting today. Public Services and Procurement Canada supports federal departments and agencies in their daily operations by serving as their central purchasing agent, common service provider, linguistic authority, and a variety of other roles. My organization is responsible for the acquisition of defense and marine goods and services on behalf of the Canadian Armed Forces and the Department of National Defence, the Canadian Coast Guard, and other federal clients. We work with client departments and industry partners to ensure that our members have the equipment they need to carry out their important work. We also work closely with our colleagues at Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada to leverage these procurements to deliver economic benefits for Canada and Canadians. Defence procurement is shaped by the cornerstone policies of Strong, Secure, Engage, Canada's defence policy, which came out in 2017, and the National Shipbuilding Strategy. Our work is further guided by the Defence Investment Plan, which was approved in 2018. These policies and plans help PSPC ensure that the Canadian Armed Forces and the Canadian Coast Guard are well equipped and supported. Today, I want to briefly highlight the work that we at PSPC are doing to support the Canadian Multi-Mission Aircraft Procurement, also known by its acronym as CMMA, after which I'm happy to take questions from members of the committee. For any defense procurement, PSPC first receives information on the requirement from the Department of National Defence. Early in the procurement process, as part of pre-procurement activities, PSPC engages with industry and undertakes market analysis. This allows us to know what industry in Canada and globally is capable of producing in response to the requirement and the timeline they can produce it in. With this information, we are better able to work with our federal clients and partners to identify the most appropriate procurement strategy. For example, our requests for proposal are more likely to result in a successful procurement if market analysis demonstrates a healthy marketplace for the requirement. For the Canadian Multi-Mission Aircraft Procurement, PSPC began engaging an independent third party to conduct a market assessment of potential solutions for this capability. This analysis also looked at Canadian aerospace capabilities to analyze the different options and to assess the feasibility of the development of a CMMA solution in Canada. Based on the findings of that third party, the project team concluded that it would be very challenging for Canadian industry to develop a CMMA solution with the required capabilities within the time frame needed to meet the estimated life expectancy of the CP-140 Aurora aircraft. Pour valider les conclusions de ce rapport, une demande de...
To validate the findings of this report, a request for information was published in February 2022, not only to seek input from industry on the identified capability requirements for the new fleet, but also to assess the industry's interest, capability, and experience to provide a solution meeting these requirements. Out of the 23 responses received, only Boeing provided a non-developmental military off-the-shelf aircraft with its P-8A Poseidon already in use by all other Five Eyes and other key allies. The other responses were either only partial or subsystem level solutions, or based on an aircraft not yet developed or requiring extensive modification. Consultations with Canada's Five Eye partners, the US, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand, has also confirmed that no other allied country currently has plans to develop a multi-mission platform, except for France, that has requested Airbus and Dassault to produce studies for a future maritime patrol aircraft as the potential basis for a replacement project to be launched in 2026, with a new aircraft potentially entering service late in the 2030s. The P-8A Poseidon capability is export controlled under the U.S. Arms Export Control Act and its regulatory instrument, the International Traffic in Arms Regulations, and can only be procured via the U.S. Foreign Military Sales Program. That program allows eligible foreign governments and international agencies to purchase defense articles and services from the U.S. government and has been accessed by Canada since 1951. With a view to exploring this option in greater detail, the CMMA project team then obtained the necessary governance approval to submit a letter of request to the U.S. government in December 2022, outlining Canada's requirements and requesting an offer for up to 16 P-8A Poseidon aircraft and associated equipment, as well as initial servicing. It is important to note that the issuance of that letter did not commit Canada to purchasing the aircraft. It merely allowed Canada to understand the capability, cost, availability, and benefits to Canadian industry in more detail.
Just wrap up
Je vous
real
remercie
brief.
de m'avoir donné l'occasion de m'adresser à vous aujourd'hui. Je répondrai volontiers à vos questions.
I'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thanks. Ms. Gregory, for 5 minutes, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Mary Gregory, and I am the Associate Assistant Deputy Minister in the Industry Sector at Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada. Under Canada's Defence Procurement Strategy, our department is responsible for leveraging certain defence procurements to promote economic activity and growth across Canada. The purpose is to ensure that certain large-scale military purchases contribute more broadly to the Canadian economy. Nous y parvenons principalement.
We achieve this mainly through the application of the Industrial and Technological Benefits Policy since 2014, and where applicable, its predecessor, the Industrial and Regional Benefits Policy, since the mid-1980s.
The Industrial Technological Benefits Policy applies on certain defence and Coast Guard projects over $100 million in purchase value that are not subject to trade agreements or when a national security exemption is applied. The policy requires companies awarded contracts to undertake business activities in Canada equal to the value of the contracts they win. Business activities can be directly related to the procurement or can include other high-value activities in areas that strengthen Canada's industrial base, in defence or other sectors, and advance key priorities. A value proposition is generally developed for competitive procurement through market analysis and informed by industry engagement that is conducted in parallel with the work of other departments to support procurement timelines. It can also be developed and applied to directed procurement. The economic benefits requirements also target business activities in Canada's key industrial capabilities, which include areas of established strength such as training and simulation and emerging technology such as artificial intelligence. En tant que ministère clé de la...
As a core department under Canada's Defence Procurement Strategy, our department takes part in interdepartmental governance and works closely with our partner departments in the procurement process. This enables our officials to develop economic benefit approaches early on in the procurement process and work in parallel with the work of our partner departments to support timely decision-making and in keeping with timetables.
Its policy, Canada has developed a robust and flexible tool that achieves positive economic outcomes in an open and transparent manner consistent with the overall procurement process. Canada's regional development agencies can also play an important role in the process and work closely with businesses to streamline the identification of potential suppliers. Contractors are also given a proportionate amount of time to complete their obligations, usually tied to the duration of the contract. Étant donné que le Canada met à
Since Canada has leveraged defense procurements for economic benefits for over 3 decades, most large contractors are well aware of the ITB policy and its associated obligations.
It's an important tool to foster economic growth, support innovation, contribute to exports, and help maintain and build Canada's industrial base. Thank you very much. Merci.
Great, thank you very much. We'll start our 6-minute round with Ms. Block for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to thank our witnesses for joining us today. I know it's only a one-meeting study, but I think it's important for us to get an update on what is happening with this procurement project. Again, we are meeting today to discuss the procurement process of the P-8 Poseidon aircraft. And really, I think as parliamentarians, we're here to ensure that proper procurement processes are being followed, as well as taxpayers are getting good value for their money. And so I believe that it's important that we have this opportunity. I know that each of you has provided us with an overview of your department's role in procurement. But I have a question in regards to the Canadian Armed Forces and what role does the Canadian Armed Forces play in the procurement of military equipment?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. The main role for the Canadian Armed Forces starts with requirements definition. So there is a capability required, and then you drift into what are the actual detailed requirements for the capability. And that would include, in this case, we're talking about the replacement for the CP-140. That's everything from the range of the aircraft to what it needs to be able to do from an anti-submarine warfare, a anti-surface warfare perspective. So what defensive mechanisms does it need? What missiles does it need to carry? And what threats does it need to mitigate? So that is the Armed Forces starts there. As the requirements get further defined and we transition into procurement process and procurement planning, my colleagues at PSPC get more heavily involved, but even throughout that process, the Armed Forces would play a role in clarifying requirements, maybe validating the information that comes back against their requirements to make sure it does indeed meet the requirements of the Armed Forces.
And how is that balanced with the role that the Department of Defense plays?
Well, that is the role of the Department of Defense integrated with the Canadian Armed Forces. So we would work together with colleagues at PSPC in doing that. But the requirements start with the Armed Forces, and they would get some help from the procurement team within National Defense. But the actual procurement process for something this large gets run by PSPC.
Okay, thank you. And then in regards to industry and PSPC, I was listening to you, Ms. Gregory, in describing industry. And in this procurement in particular, what sort of advice had you provided in regards to the economics and the benefits to the Canadian economy in procuring either with companies here in Canada or looking abroad?
Thank you for the question. We provide a policy frame that permits the benefits from the procurement, whether the provider is Canadian or external to Canada. So as the Deputy of D&D outlined, the requirements come from the national defense side, and we work with them to ensure that people understand what types of capabilities there are in Canada, We publish a state of aerospace report. Once a year, we study the state of the defense industry with the industry partners once every 2 years. So we try to provide some open, transparent information about the state of Canada's industry. But when it comes to the procurement process, we try to ensure that we can help them understand what capabilities exist and how they can be leveraged.
Thank you very much. I know in the timeline between the launch of the request for information in February 22 by PSPC and the letter of request that was sent to the U.S. government in March of 2023 for up to 16 of Boeing's P-8A Poseidons, and somewhere in there were rumors of sole sourcing that started in December, and I'm just wondering if you could answer the question, and you might have, Mr. Paget. Did I hear you say that the RFI was sent to multiple companies?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Indeed, the request for information was sent to multiple companies. Actually, it was an open request for information for industry at large. We did get a fair number of answers, up to 23, and after the request for information was, after we received the information, we proceeded in a fairly detailed analysis of all the information received.
Right. What happened between February and December of 22nd that actually led to the letter being sent to the U.S. government? I know you were cut off when you were explaining that the issuance of the letter did not mean, and you were about to tell us, that I'm sure that it did not mean that it was a letter signaling a request to purchase. Although I do note that in June of 2023, the U.S. government pre-approves the sale. So what happened between February and December that led the government to write a letter, or the department to write a letter to the U.S. government asking for up to 16 Boeings?
And I'm afraid I have to cut you off again because we're at 6 minutes. So perhaps you can provide that in writing, or we can get to it in our next round. Mr. Kuzmirchuk for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And first, I just wanted to begin by saying thank you to my colleague, Madame Vignola, for bringing this motion forward and this study forward. I think this is incredibly important conversation that we're having here today. The men and women of our Royal Canadian Armed Forces, they have a hard job, and they do that job very, very well. And oftentimes, it's at they face peril to their safety and their livelihood. We saw that this summer with the loss of 2 servicemen with the crash of the Chinook helicopter. And so my number one objective here is to make sure that we get the best plane for our servicemen for the purpose, for their mission, and making sure that they come back every single night from their work. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about capabilities. And I wanted, Mr. Matthews, if I can, I wanted to ask you how the capabilities of the CMMA requirements differ from the existing capabilities of the Aurora. What's changed? And what are some of the emerging threats that the CMMA will be facing?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A few points here. Number one, the CP-140 is an old plane, put into service 1980. Now, it's been upgraded several times since that, since it first came into service, but from a capability perspective, it is losing relevance rather quickly. And that is, A, because it's old, but B, because our adversaries are getting more complicated much more quickly than maybe we had hoped. So it's losing relevance, and there's only so much you can do to upgrade a plane that old to keep it relevant, and our current plan is 2030. Where the CMMA will differ, more self-defense. You want to put an asset into theater that is capable of self-defense, but also more modern offensive capability in terms of the missiles it can carry, both for anti-submarine but also anti-surface warfare. The other piece, and I think there's a risk here that we oversimplify this conversation. We talk about a plane. This is a plane with very complicated systems on board that make it a relevant asset. So this is radar, sensors, underwater, and then all of the integrated communications, intelligence, surveillance type capabilities that go with it. So this is not just a flying piece of metal. It's the systems that come with it that make it relevant. The capability required for the CMMA integration is absolutely critical. And this is integration with the other assets the Canadian Armed Forces employs, but also integration and interoperability with our NATO allies. And that is becoming increasingly important in the world we have right now.
Can you speak to that interoperability a little bit, why that's important and why that's gaining more importance right now?
Certainly, and you can pick the dangerous spot in the world you like, but we are rarely there alone. We are there with Five Eyes partners, we are there with NATO allies or other allies. And so the ability to exchange information in real time, the ability to have complete or all domain awareness about subsurface, surface, and all the various threats is critical to inform the men and women operating the plane of their best course of action. And as I said, we are very rarely doing that alone. So the ability to exchange information with our NATO partners, with other allies, is absolutely critical. And when you look at the current asset, it is a bit of, it's dated, let's just say that. And it's becoming increasingly difficult to sustain it. If we look at what our allies have done, all our Five Eyes partners and many of our NATO allies have gone to the P8. And so interoperability is absolutely critical. Not to say that the P8 is the only thing that can do it, but a lot of our allies have already gone there.
You mentioned, obviously, multi-mission. You touched upon that a little bit. Can you just describe a little bit for the folks watching at home what we mean by multi-mission? What type of missions would a plane like this conduct? So
it will certainly conduct the same types of mission that the CP-140 conducts right now. If you think about in the news recently, the flights in terms of enforcing sanctions and monitoring sanctions against North Korea. So that type of surveillance task absolutely still on. Surveillance being key both underwater and above water. If you think about the threats to the Arctic, monitoring those threats, absolutely critical. And then the mission set is getting more broadly and more broad and more complicated because of the evolving threat environment. But surveillance is kind of job one here. Nancy, quelque chose à ajouter ici?
Nancy, do you have anything to add?
Intelligence. The aircraft needs to be able to capture intelligence information and reconnaissance missions as well. In addition to that, the CP-140 or the maritime aircraft, multi-mission aircraft needs to be able to do command and control missions so that the assets that are available to commanders can be dispatched and used against the threat that is present.
How much time, Mr. Chair?
You have 35 seconds.
Great.
25 seconds, sorry.
So I talked about risks, and obviously if the aircraft, the current aircraft, the Aurora, continues post-2030, that elevates certain risks as well, too. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Certainly. So there's been actions taken to extend the airframe itself. So that's things like the wings and the structure, but to also upgrade the systems. And those upgrades include things like basic communication and navigation to respect changing aviation regulation. But the risk is...
Sorry, Mr. Matthews.
That's it? All right.
I know you're very used to me cutting you off in committee.
Won't be the last
I
time.
apologize for doing it again. Ms. Vignola, please, for 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Page, I'll go back to your opening statement. In it, you say that PSPC has contacted the industry. When you say industry, do you mean specific companies or a kind of industry lobby, generally speaking? When was that communication achieved and how? Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. There are many ways of communicating with the industry with a request for information. In the case of this particular aircraft, we took a very broad approach and our approach was unrestricted. All companies with an interest in aircraft, be it in the aircraft structure itself or be it an emission system that could be installed in the aircraft, had an opportunity to respond. The RFI included all high-level needs that national defense and the Canadian Armed Forces had set out. Thank you. Is there a way of asking which companies responded? We had a broad range of responses, major aircraft manufacturers like Bombardier, Boeing, and others. Other companies specialized in systems like General Dynamics. So if I understand correctly, the outcome of the RFI was to provide information on an aircraft as such, or a system, or both. Did you have any responses that were excellent? Did some respondents provide a response that would have combined both? Are there companies that could do both in a way that would be good for Canada, but that didn't respond? From the standpoint of company integration or solutions integration, that factor was not actually in the RFI, but major suppliers did tell us in certain cases how they might actually meet needs appended to the RFI. In the responses you received to your RFI, did you meet certain partners to ask for more detail? Did those partners meet with departmental experts? Was there a more in-depth process so that an expression of interest could be gone into in further depth? Was there a meeting with organizations that were interested? Yes, there were meetings. All I can say is that Canada's never said no to a company that wanted to meet with us. We met a number of times with a number of companies. If you had to choose between a company that is based abroad or a company based in Canada, which would have a more direct economic impact, Ms. Gregory?
The advantages of having a Canadian company undertaking that work in Canada directly are good for that Canadian company, there's no doubt. The policy that we apply to military procurement requires economic activity in Canada, whether the provider is foreign or Canadian. So it's about, as you say, whether the activity is directly related.
La question était lequel des deux va avoir le plus.
The question was which of the two would have a greater impact in Canada.
Should have the same type of economic activity in Canada because it goes by the contract value. So it really depends on what is the contract value that goes to the provider. So there's no doubt that Canada's defense industry, Canada's aerospace industry would like to be a provider in many circumstances to the government of Canada and to national defense. But the economic activity from a foreign provider that does work in Canada can be valuable to those providers and those suppliers.
Monsieur Page,
Mr. Page, on the CP-140, which company works on upgrading systems? Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. It might be better for national defense to answer that question. maintenance on existing systems is carried out by IMP, but mission systems are, as such, are maintained by PDMS. What systems are you looking for in your next multi-mission aircraft?
We're back to you. Mr. Johns, please.
Thanks. Thank you all for being here. We know, I'm going to start with you, Ms. Gregory, just to kind of systematically go through my questions. We know Canada is a world leader in airborne surveillance, anti-submarine warfare, and aerospace. But in May of this year, 16 Canadian aerospace and defense executives sent a letter to the Prime Minister and also to the relevant ministers at the time, Minister Champagne, Anand, and Jacek, asking them to allow an open CMMA competition instead of the sole source for the American-made P-8. Now, I hope you agree that Canadian aerospace and defense industries are world-renowned, and if so, do you accept the assertion from these industry leaders that the Canadian government failing to allow our domestic sectors to even compete on this contract will do significant reputational damage on the world stage? And how do you expect allied governments to invest in Canadian aerospace and defense if the government of Canada won't even let them compete?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. I think it's well known from Canada's aerospace and defense sector that it is difficult to sell internationally. That's what companies often tell my department and me. It is difficult to sell internationally if they're not selling within Canada. Canada has a very strong and capable aerospace industry. It's mostly top three in civil elements of aerospace, civil simulators, civil engines, and civil aircraft. So from the perspective of a defense procurement, I think the strength of Canada's aerospace industry on the defense side has been more as a supplier as opposed to an OEM. I think your point that it is very, very important. We hear constantly from industry that supplying to the government of Canada is an important element for the defense sector. And
well,
for the aerospace
I'll dive into the supply side. We know that the Boeing product does not provide sovereign control of the intellectual property to Canada, and approvals for any future modifications, they must be granted by the U.S. military. Meanwhile, both Unifor, representing over 11,000 Canadian aerospace workers, and the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers have issued letters to the federal government saying that awarding a sole source contract for the American-made P-8A threatens Canadian aerospace jobs. Can you confirm that no Canadian workers will build Canada's P-8 Poseidons?
Thank you for the question. The Poseidon aircraft, what I understand, it's based on a Boeing platform for which there are certain subcomponents built in Canada, but overall the platform is produced in the United States. So it's unlikely that there will be a lot of direct Canadian content on that aircraft.
To go back to what you initially talked about in terms of supplying those jobs, given Canada's recent inability to negotiate any guaranteed supply chain work on the F-35 fleet that we're currently procuring, how confident are you that you'll be able to negotiate guaranteed industrial and technological benefits for Canadian industry and workers equal to the full value of the P-8 contract, of at least $7 billion? And would you agree that a sole source contract where industrial offsets will be negotiated after the approval of the purchase cannot in any way guarantee maximum economic benefits for Canada, a defense procurement priority outlined in Canada's own defense strategy policy, strong, secure, and engaged?
Thank you for the question. Our policy for industrial technological benefits can apply to foreign military sales, and it can apply to directed procurement. So what would happen in that case is we would negotiate an agreement with the provider. So if it were Boeing, we would negotiate with Boeing to conduct industrial benefits of the value of the contract in Canada. So as you say, they wouldn't necessarily be directly on the platform that's purchased, but they could very well and often are in commercial procurements, commercial activities that occur across Canada. Boeing has obligations already on previously purchased
Certainty
aircraft.
here. There's no certainty. Now, in July of this year, and I'm sorry to cut you off, the time's so short, the Premier of my province, who obviously I'm a big fan of, Premier Eby from British Columbia, he also said to the media in July in response to a question about CMMA that he supports the Canadian government aggressively investing in domestic aerospace and defense industries through open competition, like France and other allied nations do. Now, more recently, the Quebec National Assembly unanimously passed a motion calling on the provincial government to lobby the federal government to open the CMMA procurement to Canadian firms. What is your response to the governments of Ontario, Quebec, and my home province of British Columbia, who clearly believe a sole source for the American-made P-8 is not in the best interest of their provincial aerospace and defense industries and economies overall?
Thank you for the question. The industrial benefits policy that we apply can apply to a procurement from with a provider from outside Canada. It does provide benefits to industry in Canada, business activities in Canada, so they may not be directly related to the procurement itself, but the industrial benefits do come from other types of activities that a company like Boeing would undertake. And often they choose suppliers on the commercial aerospace side, for example, or other suppliers. Thank you.
That's our time. Thanks very much. We'll start our second round. Mr. Genwis for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Before I proceed to questions with the witnesses, I want to provide a verbal notice of motion on another topic. Chair, after 8 years, it's clear that this Prime Minister is not worth the cost, and we've seen many examples of out-of-control and wasteful spending. I'd like to put the following motion on notice with respect to the Arrive Scam app. The motion is as follows: that the committee report to the House its deep dissatisfaction with the value for money in spending $54 million on the Arrive Can app. It also acknowledges that the Harper government successfully developed multiple apps at a fraction of the cost, including the Travel Smart app developed for $416,030, launched on December 19th, 2015. The Border Wait Times app developed for $89,981.77, launched on May 18th, 2016. The CBSA e-Declaration app developed for $122,712, launched in 2017. The Canadian Armed Forces app developed for $107,992, launched on July 1st, 2016. CRA's Business Tax Reminder app developed for $138,800, launched in August 2014. The Veterans Matter app developed for $132,464, launched in 2010. The MyCRA app developed for $2.8 million, launched in February 2015. Madam Clerk, if you didn't manage to write all of that down while I was talking, I'm happy to provide this in writing. Again, this motion underlines the deep satisfaction many Canadians have with what happened with Arrive Can and the broader pattern of waste and mismanagement that we've seen from the government. In the remaining time I have, thank you to the witnesses for being here. And I will say you're before us in the wake of a decision from the Canadian International Trade Tribunal regarding propulsion upgrade for the Coast Guard icebreaker. And although that's not the principal topic, I would like to maybe ask you to reflect on that decision, the findings, and the possible lessons learned from that experience.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. So maybe a couple of high-level reflections on the matter. We in PSPC we run very rigorous solicitation process based on requirements of our client departments, as per my introduction notes. These requirements are very technical. Some of them are very focused on management. In this case here, we're talking about a vessel life extension work period for a shipyard that was quite involving. So there's a huge amount of technical requirements. Some of these, sometimes requirements, when they are assessed, each one comes in with a criteria. The interpretation of these criteria sometimes can be different from one body of people to another. So I think that's, for me, a reflection on this entirety of the case. I think if I have a more personal reflection, because the case was quite complex, involved a couple of rounds of submitting to the tribunal, would be to make sure that all parties involved fully understand the matter at stake at the outset, because I think it triggered, unfortunately, a second round of complaint and more analysis and more deliberation.
Okay, sorry, I'm gonna jump in because of time limitations. I mean, the finding was you describe it as a technical matter, and I accept that these are matters that are going to be highly technical for the average person, but these are things in which the department is supposed to be expert, and from what I understand, the finding is going to be costly to the government in terms of the finding of illegal granting of the upgrade for the project. So I guess I want to press you to say a bit more about lessons learned, because it sounds like a pretty significant failure to have this case, the ruling made as it was, and maybe the lesson should be more than just, well, it was really complicated.
I'm afraid we'll have to leave it at that, and perhaps, again, like so many other things, get back to it another time. Mr. Baines, for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all of our department members that are joining us today. I want to echo something my colleague said, that military safety is paramount, and I also believe that equally as important is the equipment, the resources, the tools that are made available to them. So I want to touch a little bit about, I think it was mentioned that there were Canadian suppliers. I think Madam Gregory mentioned that there are suppliers that are part of the P8 that are Canadian. Do we have a number on that? If I can go to maybe Mr. Matthews, how many suppliers contribute to the P8 Canadian?
Maybe I'll start with some generic comments and see if Mary or Nancy wants to chime in. Supply chains right now are very much global. So I know it's tempting to just think of something that's completely made in Canada or completely made in the United States. The reality is, regardless of where the bulk of the manufacturing is, there are often links to other countries. And obviously we want to make sure those, Canada has maximum opportunity, but also we want to make sure that none of those components are manufactured in places we would not be comfortable with. So integration of supply chain with allies is critical. As my colleague Ms. Gregory said, there are some Canadian components on the P8 already, and I'll turn the mic to her in a second. But the more important point I think she made is, if there is a decision to go with the P8, that the economic benefits policy requirements don't change regardless of whether it's, the prime is in Canada or the prime is headquartered elsewhere. And Mary, maybe I'll pass to you.
Thank you so much. I don't know the exact number of suppliers. I apologize on the P8. It is a militarized version of, I think it's a 737. So Boeing Winnipeg does have parts and composites and elements, components that might relate to the 737, but I apologize, I don't know the specifics on which elements might come from Canada. But my understanding is it's a small amount, so I wouldn't suggest it's a big number. Thanks.
Okay, and maybe I'll go back to Mr. Matthews. What's the life expectancy of the replacement aircraft?
So I guess it depends on what solution is chosen. Let's be blunt here, Mr. Chair, the most specific information we have is on the P8 because it is an existing product. All of the other products and the information we learned through the RFI run by PSPC are developmental in nature. So there is a lot of good work done to estimate when the products might be ready. and then how long it might last. And so when we heard back from the RFI, and Simon, feel free to correct me if I got this wrong, most of the developmental options, that means they don't have an option today that meets the requirements, we're looking at somewhere between 2036 to 2038 is their, I'd say, most optimistic estimate of when they would have a plane ready with all the systems. And then so you have a lifespan beyond that. If you look at the CP 140, came into service in 1980, you know, we're 43 years, 44 years from there, so that's kind of a good guess. What we know about the P8 is the U.S. intends to keep that in service until the mid-2060s. So again, we've got about a 40-year runway on that particular asset, and it is the one we have the most certainty on because it is an existing product.
Okay, and I'll go to Mr. Paget. Stepping away from this particular procurement because no decision's been made, we know the default position of PSPC is to run competitions whenever possible. What are the factors that led to the decision to go another way?
So thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Maybe this is a good segue to the answer just provided by Mr. Matthews. When we receive a requirement, we look at what the requirement is and the details around it, and then we try to have the best solicitation process for the requirement. So in this case here, we started our process with a request for information as detailed a little bit earlier. We also had a third-party set of eyes on our work on the request for information. And then, as Mr. Matthews has mentioned, the result of that request for information was that at the moment, after the research revealed that we only had one military off-the-shelf product that could meet the requirements of Canada at the moment. So that then trigger, and I think I'll go back to a previous
Sorry,
question.
Mr. Page, we're past our time.
Okay.
Ms. Vignola for 2.5, and then Mr. Johns for 2.5.
Si je me trompe,
If I'm not mistaken, Mr. Page, the year by which we need the aircraft is 2030 onward. How long does a call for tender take, and will it delay matters? Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. 2 points. When we issued the RFI, we also had third parties. There was no availability for an off-the-shelf, military off-the-shelf aircraft that we could have by 2030. We remained open for something broader, and we are actually still there. And then we tried to see how long it would take. How long does a call for tender take from the time it's published to the time it closes to the decision? Once we have the details of what the client department needs, from that point to when the contract is awarded, if we fast-track the process, we can do it in 30 to 32 months. But that's the contract, not the aircraft. For the Poseidon, it is modified as the client wants, right? That's what you will need. It's an aircraft that was modified to comply with the requirements of the U.S. military, and the armed forces of other countries adopted the same requirements. So even though they have some similar characteristics, it is a modified C-237. Is there no current aircraft on this planet that can be both amended, modified, interoperable, interchangeable? Nobody has an aircraft that can be modified as needed. Well, important factors are how long it would take and what it would cost. For the P8, it took the U.S. 30 years to come up with something that met their requirements.
And so I think the point that I would like to emphasize here is the modifications we're talking about to take a civilian aircraft and modify it into something military. Very complicated, very expensive. These are not easy modifications. It's not to say it cannot be done.
Thanks, Mr. Matthews. We're half a minute past our time. Mr. Johns for 2.5, please.
Sure. Mr. Page, you mentioned that the PSPC did a third-party market assessment. I'd like to, with the will of the committee, Mr. Chair, ask you to table that document to the committee. Thank you. Great. Mr. Chair, is that, you got that?
Sorry,
Great.
we're...
Okay. Just, I asked Mr. Page to table the document in terms of he had the third-party market assessment that they did.
Yeah, colleagues, are we comfortable with that?
Great.
Please
Thank
do,
you.
Mr. Page.
Obviously, the environmental concerns are significant to us. We understand the P8 costs approximately about $29,900 US per flight hour, 30% more than the CP140, and uses significantly more fuel than the CP140. Based on a fleet yearly flying rate of 8,000 hours, this equates to an annual operating cost of approximately $239 million US. Have these costs been provisioned in annual estimates, and what provisions for carbon offsets and green procurement considerations have been made for this procurement? Mr. Page, I'll ask you this, and just also, I might as well finish it because I'm not going to have a lot of time left. Given Canadian industry's proven track record of delivering specialized military aircraft that are less expensive to operate and more fuel efficient than the P8, why won't you give Canadian industry the opportunity to do that again with the CMMA program?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Those questions are very focused on the plane itself, the cost for sustainment. I think they're better for D&D to answer. Yeah. I can move in with a process discussion if you wish, Mr. Johns, after.
You have about a minute, Mr. Matthews.
I'll try and be quick. In terms of the carbon offsets around military activity, the department is still developing an overall approach for that, regardless of the option picked here. I think the point I'd make on serviceability, the current serviceability of the CP140 is around 45%. So it's down where it should be. It's an old plane. That's not surprising. The other point I would make about the P8, and again, it's a certainty versus some speculation on the other options, it can get to theater much faster than the CP140. So I'll take your word for your observations on the fuel cost, but because something like the P8 can get into theater much more quickly, it spends more time doing its actual job as opposed to getting there, and it can fly at higher altitude as well. So those are other requirements that are factored in addition to sustainment.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kusi for 5 minutes, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much to all of our witnesses for being here today. I very much appreciate the topic of procurement. I served with Global Affairs Canada as a management consular officer for several years, so I date myself back to the time of Mercs. So it's always a pleasure to be in the room with other procurement officers. Certainly, I did not do procurement at a level of this, but certainly some medium-end projects within missions around the world. So thank you very much for being here today. I had a few questions about the initial RFI of February of 2022. I wanted to know how many responses did you get to the initial RFI, please?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. We received 23 responses.
23 responses, okay. And regarding the RFI, my understanding is that it was only a document of 14 pages, and once you take away the cover page, the table of contents, that it became even a significantly smaller document, less detailed document. Would you say that it was a typical RFI that laid out all of the requirements which would be necessary to fill the procurement?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mr. President. So I would say yes, at this stage of the procurement, it was a typical RFI. I mentioned earlier that the RFI included all high-level mandatory requirements that we had from the Department of National Defense. Now, it's important to understand the difference between a high-level mandatory requirements or just generic high-level requirements such as interoperability would be one of them, instead of a specific set of requirements that would be a lot more detailed that we would use for a request for proposal process. So I just want to make sure that you understand that a 14-page RFI is fairly standard where we were with the project, at the stage we were with the project.
Okay, thank you for that response. Now, after you received the 23 responses to the RFI, how many times would you say you consulted with industry? How much industry consultation did you do, would you say?
So thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. So from a formal engagement, re-engaging with industry, we did not. So I mentioned earlier that we re-engaged with industry, with all of those who came back, who wanted to talk to us, who wanted more information, who wanted to share additional information about their respective solution.
Sorry, why did you not engage with industry?
So the key piece of the RFI was that it was unanimous. It was a conclusion of the RFI that the only aircraft that was offering a solution to all HLMRs as received by the Department of National Defense that currently was available was the Boeing P-8 Poseidon. So from a process point of view, we went from capturing this information, doing the analysis, and try to dig more into this potential solution of the Boeing P-8 Poseidon. The interesting part about this procurement is that the only way we can get additional information versus the RFI from Boeing, it's through a government-to-government foreign military sale engagement. So therefore, in late 2022, we kick-started that engagement through a letter of request to the government, the U.S. government, to ensure that we were going to have specific information about the Boeing P-8 Poseidon going forward to make sure that we had all the pieces of information necessary to make our call about next steps and further analysis.
That's a bit concerning to me, given that it was a 10-page document, and as you mentioned, high-level information, which is usually normal for the RFI stage of the process, but not the RFP. And you indicated that you only communicated with the industry that responded to you with, was it further questions or further information? You indicated that you didn't communicate with all of the respondents to the RFI, but only a select few. How did you determine those with whom you communicated after receiving the responses from the RFI?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. It was simply based on a request point of view. We didn't say no to anyone. We engaged with everyone that wanted to talk to us about this procurement. With respect to the concerning part, we had the third-party assessment, as I mentioned earlier. It was fairly standard or fairly, the analysis was fairly conclusive with respect to the only military off-the-shelf. I think there was enough information in the RFI responses to come up with that conclusion.
Thank you. Merci.
Thank you, Ms. Kusi. Thank you, Mr. Page. Ms. Outwin, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for being with us this afternoon. I come from a riding that represents CFB Gagetown, and so this is a particularly important conversation for my constituents and for Canada. And so I think, Ms. Gregory, you mentioned that the P-8 shares extensive commonality with Boeing 737 NG, which has support infrastructure around the globe. So I'm wondering, in your opinion, would this commonality in spares and in training for air crews and maintainers reduce costs and potentially also enable military operations to leverage support throughout the world?
Thank you so much for the question. I can't speak to the degree to which the military training would be comparable to civilian training. I don't know, Nancy, if you can answer something like that. I think Boeing, like others, has worldwide capability.
Thank you very much for the question. The military training is very different than a civilian typical airline training, and it would have to be developed specifically for the purpose of military operations, because the missions that the members of the Canadian Armed Forces are doing are much different than what you would see on a 737.
Thank you very much. And to you, Madame Tremblay, with the range and speed and endurance of the P-8, I understand it makes it ideal as a platform to monitor Canada's northern and maritime approaches. Could you speak to that specifically?
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. President. Yes, in fact, the endurance and the long range that the Royal Canadian Air Force has requested as a requirement for this aircraft would be met by the P-8. Canada is a big country, and so the RCF wants to be in a position to be able to do the surveillance mission and the intelligence and command and control missions definitely within Canada, but as well, the Canadian Armed Forces is often called upon to interact with allies abroad, Canada, Indo-Pacific region being one of them, and yeah, the P-8 would meet the range requested by the RCAF.
Can I just add one thing to Mr. Chair, just to be clear? And this applies to planes and ships. You know, we are loading them up with more and more things all the time. Weight is important, and weight obviously impacts range. The P-8 does indeed meet the RCF's requirement for range. The range is not as good as the CP-140, largely because of the weight of it. But what the P-8 does do is it is capable of air-to-air refueling. So you can, you know, it meets the range requirements of the RCF, and it is able to do refueling in the air, which again allows it to stay in theater longer.
Excellent. And to Mr. Matthews again, what are the limitations that the Canadian Armed Forces currently faces, especially relative to allies who, by still using the CP-140?
The limitations, well, we are upgrading the CP-140 to mitigate some of those, but I think it is becoming a less relevant asset more and more quickly. It is not able to self-defend currently, and that is an important aspect in the current environment. We have plans to fix that, but the less relevant it becomes, the more challenges it has in communicating with allies, the more difficult it is to deploy. And so I think while we plan to fly it until 2030, I think we can forecast the relevance of that asset decreasing as time goes on.
And just in line with that question as well, does Canada's aviation infrastructure, would it need to be modernized or expanded to accommodate the P-8A?
I'm not sure how to answer that. I think, you know, you have to develop a sustainment strategy for any new asset you bring on board. You have to have a sustainment strategy for your old assets, which becomes a problem. I think from an infrastructure perspective, I'm not aware of anything overly special here, but I'm going to turn to Nancy.
Yeah, the infrastructure requirements need to be further refined once we have, I guess, finalized the decisions as to what's going to be the aircraft replacing the CP-140. Obviously, we would need to have the infrastructure related to being able to operate the aircraft, maintain the aircraft, and train the aircrew and the maintainers as well.
Mr. Chair? Just quickly to end, are you aware of any problems with the operation of the P-8A Poseidon? Anyone?
You may be aware of some work done by, I believe it was the U.S. Senate, that looked at availability of the P-8. They had some challenges early on with making sure they had the sustainment of parts necessary to keep it in the air as often as desired. And the Navy, it's the U.S. Navy in this case, has actually fixed that problem, so they're 80% or above right now.
Thanks very much. Ms. Block for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I want to follow up on the questioning of my colleague, Mr. Genuis, and get back to the Canadian International Trade Tribunal ruling and the impact that that has had on, I guess, the reputation of public services and procurement, as well as concerns that it raises in regards to future procurement. And so I guess what I want to be clear on is that in regards to the study we're having right now, again, what we are simply trying to identify are some procedural discrepancies and processes around large procurement projects. And I guess one of my questions would be, how can we be sure that PSPC is up to the task of replacing the Auroras if they continually bungle up procurement projects like the one indicated in the ruling by the CITT?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. So part one, CITT, I think I'll go back to my previous comment, Mr. Chair. Every defense and marine procurements, once detailed from a requirements point of view, is fairly massive. There are many technical requirements. Many of them are mandatory. Some are desirable. Different assessment, different criteria. So the interpretation sometimes of a criteria from one party to another can differ. I think we are doing really well. We don't do this job alone. Technical requirements are evaluated with the client department. In this case of the CITT here for the Terry Fox vessel life extension, the Canadian Coast Guard is with us. They are the technical authority for the procurement. We're there from a process point of view and good stewardship of the solicitation. And ISED is also in the room to make sure that we respect any Canadian economic benefits that we may have associated with the project. We take this job very seriously. We're laser focused every time there's a bid evaluation. In many cases, we have fairness monitors. In many cases, we have software to assist us in determining the compliant and the winning bidder.
I have a follow-up question. How much did this process cost the Canadian taxpayers? The process with CITT?
So that has yet to be determined. If you're asking for our own efforts in government, I don't have that figure yet. The CITT now is asking us to negotiate a compensation. We are in the process of doing that, so I don't have the exact figure at this moment.
And last question, can you tell me how many other CITT disputes there may be in regards to procurement with PSPC?
Yes, I don't have that number, but Mr. Chair, what I can share is over 2.5 years with PSPC and the Defense and Marine. This was my second case at the tribunal.
Okay, thank you.
Giving up your minute and a half?
Oh, yeah, I guess I would, look, I would make just the observation that there are several time and I think capability constraints that must be satisfied in the replacement of any military procurement, the Auroras notwithstanding. And I guess I would say, look, if it isn't done right, it will cost Canadians a whole lot more than it already is. And I would say that it would just open up another capability gap in our Canadian Armed Forces. And I would end with that observation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sousa for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentations. And I appreciate my colleagues and around the table who have asked you a number of questions that are all relevant and important, right? We all want to make certain that the process is proper, secure, it captures the essence of trying to also build our homegrown talent and enable some of our own suppliers to succeed in the process, to provide some sovereignty and protection of Canadian defense measures, including the patents and the initiatives that we hold dear. And I appreciate the concerns that we foster that process. And Mr. Page, you've mentioned that we haven't made a decision as of yet. We're still going through that procedure to determine, ensuring that that is being done. And today I had a meeting with a former brigadier general who flew these aircrafts, who flew for us during his day. And he mentioned how critically important it is for us to ensure that the process is done appropriately for the benefit of having the right aircraft necessary to go forward. Proven, not necessarily on concept stage, right? The enablement of ensuring that in the Arctic and so forth that is able to perform well. And he mentioned that this is a long process. It's not something you do quickly. And you have reaffirmed that in your discussions. And I just want to sort of elaborate a little bit further in terms of that integrity. You know, what are the preferences in your process relative to our homegrown talent? And then that doesn't include just one supplier, right? The many that we have. And then the proven capability by which to proceed forward. I guess I'm trying to reintroduce or advise this committee the difference between the RFP and the RFI, enabling this, and why it takes so long. I don't know if Mr. Page or Mr. Matthews who wishes to proceed to go forward.
So thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. So really, for this procurement here, we have not released a request for proposal. We had the request for information. We had some results, good analysis on that, some very specific conclusions, also supported by, as I mentioned earlier, a third-party assessment. And then we needed more information from the solution that delivered on all HLMRs at the current time. As I mentioned earlier, that triggered the government-to-government engagement that we have right now with the U.S. government for foreign military sales through the letter of request, and we have received more information. I would not characterize this process so far as having taken a lot of time. I think we have met actually each one of the milestones fairly swiftly, fairly effectively, with the right information at end. Just before I turn it back to Mr. Matthews, we take in our branch our job very seriously of balancing all the pillars of defense procurement. So we have the performance pillar / capability. In this case here, the availability is also a huge component of that performance piece. Then there's the cost and the value for money. And sometimes we think that the cost is simply the price of the aircraft, but it's a lot more than that when you're purchasing a capability. So we're also taking that into consideration. And then the third key pillar is the one that I said is responsible for are the economic benefits. So we have a lot of information on the table. We still have not made our decision. We're debating it, and to a good degree of granularity.
Mr. Chair, Simon wrapped up with where I was going to jump in. So how are we doing on time?
Sousa has another minute.
Oh, Mr. Matthews, take it up.
All right.
I want to explain to us how important the work that you're doing to safeguard our troops and our country relative to the purchase we're making today, because it's a long-term purchase.
And now you have 35 seconds.
Okay. I think we're getting a good airing of the issues and the trade-offs around this decision, which has yet to be taken. You know, from a defense perspective, we will always prioritize capability for the armed forces first. And I think what you have here is an interesting discussion about the risks around developmental projects. And developmental projects can be great because they spur innovation. They also come with schedule and cost risk and not guaranteed to succeed. And so that's, and then you have Simon and his department who've already weighed in on making sure you have a proper procurement process and that you followed, that aspect. So I think those are the key issues that we're facing here. Obviously, from a defense perspective, the Air Force
Sorry,
looks
Mr.
at capability
Matthews,
first.
that was our 25 seconds. Ms. Vinola for 2.5, then Mr. Johns for 2.5.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Very quickly, Mr. Page, Mr. Matthews. When you say off the shelf in your request for information, was the request for an off-the-shelf solution explicitly set out in the RFI? Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. I'll check. but analysis of the information we did receive made it possible to see whether what we received did in fact refer to a military off-the-shelf aircraft or not. I don't know if that was explicitly set out. Is it possible that if that requirement wasn't in the initial RFI, one or more companies may have failed to specify that it was an off-the-shelf solution, and because of that, their request was set aside? No, I sincerely don't believe that, because we are aware of what aircraft are out there in this field. Multi-mission aircraft, we do have the experts needed, and we also had an opportunity to exchange with the companies. We can ask companies if we're not sure. Are we to understand that the safety of Canadians and Quebecers would be better protected by not going out to tender than by going out to tender? How can you convince me that you'll get the best price without going out to tender, without a competitive call for bids? Well, ultimately, the decision to go to tender has not been made, so that decision is still being made. And as I said earlier, we need to point out, well, according to the information we have, Mr. Chairman, we're looking at what we've received.
Je peux continuer.
Mr. Johns for 2.5 minutes, please.
Mr. Paget, we understand that other countries are seeking alternatives to the P-8 due to acquisition and operating costs. Have you spoken to your South Korean counterparts to understand why they're thinking of buying another multi-mission fleet to replace their remaining P-3Cs and P-3Ks rather than more P-8s?
Thank you for the question, Mr. President. I have not.
Okay, what about, Canada's spoken to other countries such as France as to why they're electing to develop their own solution and not purchase the P-8. Why is France not as concerned about interchangeability as Canada is, and why is France more supportive of their local aerospace industry than Canada is of our own aerospace industry?
Thanks for the question, Mr. Chair. Usually the country-to-country discussions are more with the Department of National Defense. Not that I want to shy away from the question, but I have not engaged with any other countries on this procurement.
Okay. And back to about environmental concerns, we understand that the P-8 will only be used to it's only going to be supported by the U.S. Navy until 2048, and that the Navy will start sunsetting the P-8 in the late 2030s, just 6 years after Canada achieves initial operating capability. What is D&D's long-term sustainment plan for the fleet after U.S. Navy divestment?
Maybe, Mr. Chair, I can take that one. My understanding of the plans of the U.S. Navy, and they are always subject to change, is they plan on flying the P-8s into the mid-2060s. So I have different information than was indicated in the question. So I'm not aware of the dates that were shared in the question.
Okay, I guess just looking for, what the long-term sustainment plan is, and wouldn't a more modern, more environmentally friendly Canadian-made aircraft with an abundance of ongoing support and parts be a more prudent procurement than something that will sunset only a few years after delivery? And these environmental concerns are real, and hoping you can answer them.
So I think, again, on the sustainment and the lifespan of the asset, the P-8, our understanding is it has a long run ahead of us into the mid-2060s. From a sustainment perspective, generally speaking, the more assets that are in service, the more readily available sustainment parts are. So if you're dealing with a common fleet that is shared with allies, you generally have more access to ease of access to supply chains. We're feeling it on the CP-140 right now. As allies have divested, we're finding it more and more challenging to find parts. So you need a sustainment plan for sure. Ms. Gregor has already talked about potential economic benefits. But my rule of thumb is common fleets amongst allies is a good risk mitigation measure for sustainment. On the environmental question, we're going to have to come back to you, Mr. Chair, because regardless of the decision made, those are outstanding questions.
Okay. Thanks very much. Just before we go to Ms. Kusi, just let the witnesses know we have passed a motion in this committee that when you are getting back to us with any documents or information, we do have a 3-week time limit. So I would ask you to watch for that. Before we go to Ms. Kusi, colleagues, if you don't mind, I'm just going to ask for 3 very, very quick questions, I promise you. Can you let us know who did the third-party assessment?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Avicent.
Avicent, okay. Was the Kawasaki P1 considered at any part of this process? I realize it's more expensive than that, but did they respond to the RFI?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Yes, they did.
Okay, but it wasn't considered. And who was the other one in the CITT dispute? Was that the Glock Sig Sauer issue, or is that a different one?
Thanks for the question, Mr. Chair. It was the pistol replacement project.
Wonderful. I told you it'd be 3 very quick questions. Ms. Kusi, for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. And again, I want to thank the witnesses very much for being here today. I think that this has certainly shed a lot of light on the process, and I certainly hope it will help the government in their deliberations as they come to the best decision for Canadians. But I'm going to take a moment now, and I'm going to bring forward a motion that I had put on notice earlier. And I know that us as a committee, we had come to the conclusion that we were scheduled to complete the ArriveCAN study in very short order. And in fact, I know we were going to be moving to the line by line even as soon as this coming week. But I believe that new information has come to light with the ArriveCAN situation that we simply, as a committee, just cannot ignore. And I will read you a communication from Ms. Dutt of Bottler to the former CBSA Executive Director, Utano Antonio. And she writes, "I wish I was reconnecting under better circumstances. Due to ongoing issues with the supplier, Dalian Enterprises, Inc., in joint venture with Coradix Technologies Consulting Limited, and their subcontractor, GC Strategies Incorporated, Bottler AI no longer feels comfortable working or associating with any of the above-mentioned parties in any capacity moving forward. We are approached by Kristen Firth of GC Strategies in early November 2019, who informed us that his client, the CBSA, asked him to reach out to us regarding starting proof of concept. After confirming the CS did have business with the agency on buy and sell, Bottler began initial groundwork and monetary investment for the project from November 2019 onward. The contract for the project was finalized between the agency and Dalian in January 2021 and has been riddled with issues that have been flagged repeatedly by both Bottler's team as well as teams within the CBSA since. From the onset in 2019, we were informed that GCS would be the supplier of the vehicle, would act as the intermediary between Bottler and the agency, for which they would charge an additional percentage fee on top of our quoted fees of $350,000 Canadian plus applicable taxes for the proof of concept pilot. In late 2020, GCS informed us that the contract would have to pass through another company that he knew. After repeated requests, we finally received the attached email entitled FYI from GCS. The value of Bottler's contract had been cut by $16,000, $336,000, with no explanation provided, as well as the agreement between GCS and Dalian also attached. At no point were we consulted by either Dalian or GCS regarding the terms or any aspect of this contract, and we never have provided our consent to the existing terms, which don't even specify our company's name. All the deliverable milestones and dates specified have been arbitrarily assigned without consultation with Bottler. This has already caused headaches and wasted unnecessary time for both the CBSA and Bottler's teams. CBSA HR project liaison has also raised concerns over the contracting. After we complete the 9th month of formal work, Bottler has yet to be paid a cent, whereas Cordix received the first payment for Bottler's work 67 days ago and have submitted another invoice for payment. Both GCS and Cordix have tried to pass Bottler's invoice on to the other party and are non-responsive to follow-up. Please find the attached respective email threads. So now we have allegations of identity theft, forged resumes, contractual theft, fraudulent billing, price fixing, and collusion, all with senior bureaucrats and 3 contractors. One who was in front of us during the ArriveCan investigation within this committee. We can't even verify the validity of the report because we were lied to during testimony. Subsequently, my colleague Larry Brock, the prosecutor, uncovered the AG was made aware of the investigation from the Globe and Mail prior to her testimony being shut down. Now, I know my opposition colleagues share this concern, and I want to thank my NDP colleague for the honor and responsibility of moving this motion after he indicated his intention in the Globe and Mail article to move a similar motion and to work with fellow Conservatives and opposition colleagues. I know everyone on this committee is a dedicated and honorable parliamentarian who wants to get the truth for Canadians. Our concerns began simply in an effort to get value for the money of Canadians, to get value for taxpayers' money. But unfortunately, it has come to so much more than this. We must now get the truth for Canadians. We cannot conclude our ArriveCan study and must continue our pursuit of the truth. And so with that, Chair, I am moving the following motion today. That the committee postpone the deadline for recommendations on the ArriveCan study in order to extend the study for an additional 4 meetings in light of the recent reports that the RCMP is investigating allegations of misconduct by 3 companies involved in the development of the ArriveCan app. Over the course of the 4 meetings, the committee will hear testimony that includes, but is not limited to, the following witnesses regarding the investigation, the evidence and its findings, and that the testimony heard during those meetings be included in the final report on the ArriveCan study, and recommendations be accepted up to a week following the final week of testimony. Ritika Dutt of Bottler, Amir Morv of Bottler, Christian Firth of GC Strategies, Cameron McDonald, former CBSA Director General, John Ozowski, former President of the CBSA, Sergeant Kim Chamberlain of the RCMP, Aaron O'Gorman, President of the CBSA, Min Doan, former CBSA Vice President and CIO, Antonio Utano, former CBSA Executive Director, Vaughn Brennan, Consultant, Jeremy Broadhurst, Chief of Staff for the Minister of Finance, David Yao, Dalian Director, and Anthony Carmanico, Dalian Director, Anita Anand, President of the Treasury Board, Jean-Yves Duclos, Minister of Public Services and Procurement, Dominique Leblanc, Minister of Public Safety, Democratic Institutions and Intergovernmental Affairs. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. And thank you, committee, for your diligent consideration of this motion. Thank you all.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Cusi. The motion was put on notice, I think, a week or 2 ago. October 6th, we are making printed copies if you've lost emailed copies. Starting speaking list on the motion, Mr. Johns.
Sure. First, I want to thank my colleague, my Conservative colleague, for doing the heavy lifting on this. We expressed that we were going to put forward a motion. This motion is sound. I think it covers the basis. Obviously, we want to work together on this. We need to get to the bottom of it. We clearly didn't get to the bottom of it in the last round of, having these witnesses before us. We want to make sure this never happens again, and getting to the bottom of this is going to help us make recommendations. I do want to make just a couple of quick alterations. I think we've kind of had a common agreement here in Parliament that we don't drag staff, chiefs of staff. We have ministers come and appear before the committee. So I'd like to move that we strike out Jeremy Broadhurst, the Chief of Staff for the Minister of Finance. I think we got enough ministers here to answer the concerns we have. And I'd like to add Mark Weber he's the National President of the Customs and Immigration Union. We had him here before. I think he's going to probably have a lot more to say given these revelations that we've seen and learned. And I want to thank Bill Curry from the Globe and Mail for the important work he's done. We wouldn't be learning about a lot of this without Bill Curry. It's pretty sad, you know, that this hasn't come through the public service, that they're not catching these things and doing due diligence to mitigate this from happening. So I'd like to move just that we remove Jeremy Broadhurst and we add Mark Weber then.
Right, if I can interrupt, I understand what you're saying about Mr. Broadhurst. There is a part where we can add other witnesses, so we don't need to name him specifically. Mr. Weber?
I'd like to put him in. So I'm just moving a quick amendment to remove Jeremy Broadhurst.
I'll take a
hopefully it's a friendly, and hopefully Ms. Kuzi support that, and then
speaking list on the amendment.
Yeah, add Mr. Weber. So that would be a moving an amendment then to the motion.
Does anyone want to speak on the sub-amendment?
I would accept this.
Okay. So moved. On division, we'll take Mr. Broadhurst off and add Mr. Mark Weber, who I think graced us with his appearance earlier. Does anyone else wish to speak on this motion? Ms. Block?
I too would like to thank my colleague for her diligence in bringing forward this motion upon the revelations that we read in Mr. Curry's article. It's long. There's a lot there, and I think when we first started the study, we absolutely believed that we weren't getting to the bottom of the story. And I just want to say to my colleagues that if you take a look at the article, there is a comment that is made where Ms. Dutt, questioned why the agency did not appear to take action in response to their first warnings, which came a couple of years ago, delivered in September 2021, but only moved on the issue after receiving the second report once ArriveCAN had become a major public controversy last fall through this committee. And so I think, we did some good work. I think it absolutely shone a light on some things. And the last comment I would make is just at the end of this article, she is quoted again as saying that she understands that speaking out could mean their federal funding will dry up and that they are taking a big risk without knowing how it will turn out. But she said this is about something that affects every single Canadian, every single taxpayer dollar that is taken from hardworking Canadians who are already struggling financially, that is given and spent through contractors through improper means. And I think that Canadians have a right to know what's going on with their hard-earned money. So I'll leave it there, and again, thank my colleague and thank all my colleagues on this committee for the work that we've done and hopefully will continue to do.
Thank you, Ms. Outwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so I'm kind of, tagging into this study and certainly interested in learning more about what transpired. And I mean, it's certainly something I've heard a lot from constituents about. My question would just simply be, given the cabinet shuffle that occurred, would it be prudent for the ministers to appear, or would officials really suffice because they have more of an understanding of what, during their time, what actually occurred? Just putting that out there for discussion.
Mr. Generous? I'm sorry, Ms. Vinola, did you have your hand? No, Mr. Generous?
Ministers are responsible for the decisions that are made in their departments. Period. We should call the minister who's responsible for the department to account for the decisions that were made by the government, by their predecessors, and within their department. That's the proper form.
Thank you, sir.
Always.
Mr. Johns?
Just to add, they can bring their staff. So.
Are we ready to vote on this, colleagues? Mr. Shawari, please.
Thank you. So fundamentally no issue. Thank you for the proposed amendment. Thank you for Ms. Kuzi for accepting it. We are going to support this. The question we have is that since this is now an open investigation by RCMP, is the timing of this for us when we invite someone from RCMP that we're going to hear, well, it's under investigation. I can't share the information. So I would suggest that we consider the timing. I'm not, I don't know whether it takes 4 or 3 or 5. But I think the finding of RCMP is going to be extremely, extremely important to us. And I don't want to start a process at the same time as RCMP is going here and pull RCMP here or pull any of these staff here. And they say, well, sorry, we cannot talk about this because this is an open case. As you all know, when we bring the ministers, we bring them, oh, well, this is an open case. This is an active case by RCMP, and we cannot make a comment on it. And then we're going to put another 2 hours of, I can't comment on. And we've already lost two cancellations. So we are going to support it, just to be very clear. It's just, I'm not sure at this point, if we move this to a priority for the committee, what we are going to get out of it, if that's the line that's going to be used. That's all. Thank you.
Don't bounce it back to public accounts. They've got enough work. We looked at it. We tried that. Are we ready to vote on this, colleagues? Do we need can we do on division? Do we need a voice? We appear to have unanimous support. Thank you very much. Well, yeah. Ms. Vinola.
Très rapidement, il y a...
Very quickly. 2 weeks ago, I believe, we did talk about this. A motion to study Canada Life. So I will reread the motion because, well, it's been a few weeks. That pursuant to Standing Order 1083C, the committee undertake a study on the changeover of the public service healthcare plan from Sun Life to the Canada Life Insurance Company, and that, to do so, the committee examine matters including the quality of the insurance coverage, taking into account the circumstances and needs of federal public service employees, the efficiency and effectiveness of the new insurance plan, particularly as concerns the online claim service and the telephone service offered to participants and health professionals. 3, the mechanisms that Public Services and Procurement Canada used in awarding the PSHCP contract to ensure the contractor had the capacity to serve the entire federal public service and provide the expected services. And 4, the measures that will be taken to correct the situation, because we all know that things aren't going all that well. That the committee allocate at least 4 meetings, well, that's where we left it 2 weeks ago, allocate at least 4 meetings to conduct the study, and that it invite to appear for 2 hours per panel the following witnesses: the Minister of Public Services and Procurement at the time the contract was awarded to Canada Life, the current ministers and officials from Canada Life, and any other witnesses it deems necessary, and that the committee report its findings and recommendations of the House, and that pursuant to Standing Order 109, the government table a comprehensive response. We left off discussion on the witnesses to be called and the time to be allocated. So this is just to remind us all where we were 2 weeks ago. I'm open to discussion.
Our speaking list, which starts with Mr. Jouari. We were, where we did leave off was Mr. Jouari's suggested amendment. I've been receiving feedback from various members, and I'm getting, generally come to the conclusion that if after number 4, where it says the measures that would be taken to correct the situation, we go in to just revise it to that the committee allocate at least 1 meeting to conduct this study. And we leave it out there for now. I get the general impression that we decided we'll do 1 meeting and then decide more if necessary from there. Mr. Jouari?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Julie, thank you for kind of starting with grounding us. I think we agreed on at least 1 meeting, and we also suggested that we'll have the officials to come and answer all the questions. And if you're not satisfied, then we can call the ministers. That's where we specifically left them. We are in support. If that amendment, that friendly amendment is acceptable, we are ready to support it. So we don't have to get into.
Right. So the motion as noted, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then everything after that is deleted, except we will change to that the committee allocate at least one meeting to conduct the study. Perfect. And then we can. We're going to, sorry, and then the last line, of course, the committee reports its findings and recommendations to the House. And then we can decide on witnesses by this Friday at noon, I think we discussed would be best. So we accept that? Wonderful. We will consider that accepted. Now, before we break, this changes our calendar because we were going to study ArriveCAN. We actually were going to study Thursday ArriveCAN draft report, which of course we're not going to do now. With two options. One is to try and find witnesses for the ArriveCAN, or perhaps the other option is have the PBO come in, and we can discuss where we've bumped recently, and we can talk about one of his recent reports on digital government and the batteries. But you had another suggestion, Mr. Jory?
Yeah. So if you're going to get PBO, we got a lot of good stuff to talk to him. So yes. If not, I may suggest that we start on the ArriveCAN because we got to look at this report.
If we can get witnesses for
ArriveCAN as I said,
Thursday.
If we can get PBO, I'd love to get. Yeah. If not, rather than again canceling it, can we just start looking at this report? Because I'm sure this is a good refresher for us to know what was discussed before we get into it.
I'll leave it up to the committee, but I'm not sure if there's any value to. We were going to do start the line by line, drafting what the information we had so far. Yeah. But now we're going to have the new information, which kind of wipes out the line by line. So we have an open Thursday.
Well, those are witness testimonies. They're not going to wipe it out. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
I was hoping that we could
like that.
Start on new witnesses, but I doubt we can find them in 2 days. So I thought we'd just plunk in the PBO there.
Chair, can you?
We have Mr. Genuis, then Mr. John.
I was just going to say we are considerably over time, and I trust your judgment. I don't think we should be doing line by line on a report when we're going to have 4 more hearings on it. That seems to be fairly obvious. But I mean, Chair, why don't you just?
Well, we do have till 6 o'clock because we started late. But
okay,
I'm hoping we can just agree on the PBO for Thursday. Okay, wonderful. That also changes a couple other things down the road, but we'll update on Thursday. Thursday, we have a couple of budget things we have to go through as well, so we'll keep about 10 minutes. Our clerk has already sent some out, and she will be sending out some updated budget things, very pro forma thing. Wonderful. There's nothing else. Colleagues, thank you, everyone, for everyone's cooperation, and we are adjourned on Mighty OGGO.